Hey, how's it going, everybody? Shaun here from Zoobox. That's right, the podcast about nonsense. But today, I want to get into a little bit of a different review. I want to do a movie review and also review the format that the movie was released on. So today, we're going to be talking about Color Out of Space, the H.P. Lovecraft adaptation starring Nicolas Cage, Jolie Richardson, and a bunch of others. Cheech Marin, or is it Chong? No, Tommy Chong. I was just thinking Cheech and Chong. Tommy Chong is in it too. He has like a extended cameo, I would say. It's directed and co-written by Richard Stanley, and like I said, it's an adaptation of the H.P. Lovecraft story of the same name. And I want to talk about it a little bit. I'm a movie collector, and I collect Blu-rays. Now I collect 4Ks, um, all sorts of movie memorabilia and all this shit. I mean, if you look at all this nerdy crap back here, I'm sure you can tell that yes, indeed, I have nerd problems. I guess you'd call it. Is that what I would call it? Would I call it nerd problems? Sure, why not? I just did, so I guess we did. Anyways, I really wanted to talk about this movie. We were supposed to do it on Zoobox Goes to the Movies a while ago, and we just kind of never got around to it. So I figured I wanted to throw up some content today. I kind of want to do more 4K movie review stuff. It is actually a space that I'm interested in. I follow a couple channels that do exclusively do kind of like 4K and Blu-ray reviews that don't really review the movie, but they review the quality of the transfers and stuff like that, and they kind of get in depth into the HDR discussion about color grading and what these new releases offer. Because a lot of times, with especially with 4K, uh, transfers really matter. Quite a bit. I would say the thing that matters the most, the thing that usually kicks it over for most people, is the HDR. And they go in with a high dynamic range, and they adjust colors, shadows, the amount of colors on the screen at once. Is obviously can be accentuated and whatnot. That kind of thing. So, but yeah, I'm going to review the movie a little bit, but I'm also going to review this release. The RLJE put out this 4K, and I did a video of like a month ago or so just talking about 4K and 4K bargain deals, and I did mention RLJE. So I'm just going to talk about the actual Blu-ray, 4K Blu-ray itself. So this movie does not have HDR. So while you're going to get the 4K fidelity from the transfer, it looks better than it does on Blu-ray, but not substantially better because it doesn't have that HDR. And a lot of RLJE movies, actually all of them from what I understand, do not have HDR. I'm assuming this is a production cost thing, and it's a pretty small company, and they put out these kind of smaller, independent, quirky, unique kind of titles like Puppet Master, The Third Reich, Color Out of Space. They put out this other movie called Mayhem. There's a lot of smaller indie genre stuff that they kind of put out. So I can understand that. And generally, they're not super expensive either. So the difference between buying this on Blu-ray and buying it on 4K, I think was like $2. So I just went with 4K. I have a 4K player. Might as well. So in that sense, it's okay. It's okay. If you find this on Blu-ray, like regular Blu-ray for a decent price, if it's ever on sale and the 4K is not on sale, it would be, you could pick that version up, and I don't think it would make that big of a deal, especially if you have a good setup. A lot of times, I mean, Blu-rays look really good. Like I have a nice 4K TV, 4K UHD TV, and most of my Blu-rays look fantastic, at least the good ones. The ones where the transfer was given some little love, some caring, because at the end of the day, that's what really makes the difference, is the care and the effort put into the transfer itself. A lot of older movies, I think, benefit from that a lot. This was shot digitally, so I kind of have a feeling, I don't know for sure, but I doubt it was shot on 4K. It was probably shot more on 2K, and then upscaled to 4K. So that it is what it is in that sense. And but like I said, I think it's if you like science fiction and you like stuff like that, or you were curious about this movie, you find it on sale on Blu-ray or on 4K Blu-ray, totally worth picking up just for that. So just to talk about the movie a little bit, I wanted to talk about the director, Richard Stanley. Richard Stanley, if you guys don't know, is a director who is kind of coming to some kind of prominence. He was a very interesting, idiosyncratic, a little weird of a director. Mostly worked in like science fiction and horror spaces. He did a few movies, one called Hardware. He had done something, I think The Dust Devil, I believe is what it's called. I could be wrong on that. You'd have to forgive me. Something to that degree. And then he had his big kind of break. His big Hollywood moment was going to be the 90s adaptation of The Island of Dr. Moreau, which came out in 1996. And he did all the, pre-production, scouting, casting, even, started filming the movie for a couple weeks before he was kind of unceremoniously fired. And a lot of that has to do with actually is Val Kilmer and Marlon Brando. So if you've seen the 1996 version of The Island of Dr. Moreau, those two guys are in there, and apparently they were incredible assholes. They made just every day suck. They made every day hell. Val Kilmer wouldn't listen. He was completely disrespectful, late, et cetera, et cetera. But what that did is it caused tension with the producers, thinking that, Richard Stanley just is a bad director. But this kind of fucked his career up. This is the first thing, and as far as I understand, this is the first movie he's directed since trying to direct The Island of Dr. Moreau. Because with The Island of Dr. Moreau, obviously, the movie came out, and they had another director came out. No different director's name is on it. I think Richard Stanley is probably credited for the writing, but it's it's an interesting movie, but it's also kind of a messy movie. And it bombed, so that even put another nail in the coffin of Richard Stanley, because they had wasted so much money, because it was kind of a big production relative to those kind of movies and relative to the time. The special effects work is fucking awesome in that movie. There are a lot of cool things about The Island of Dr. Moreau in 1996. I don't hate that movie. I have kind of a soft spot for it. I grew up with it because I was just so drawn to the oddness, not just of the story, but of the production design, and like I said, the special effects makeup. Those are some of the creepiest looking anthropomorphized animals I've ever seen in a movie to this day. I don't think anybody's really done it better, and that was Stan Winston did that. So apparently he's been trying to get something going for a long time. He's garnered a lot of sympathy because there was a documentary came out about the behind the scenes drama of The Island of Dr. Moreau called Lost Souls. I think it's on Amazon Prime. It has been in the past. It's totally worth checking out if you've never seen it, or if you're into like kind of behind the scenes movie drama and whatnot. I would totally recommend it. And it kind of just put Richard Stanley's name back out there in the film lover zeitgeist, and it kind of cleared the air a lot of the problems that he had on that set, and kind of exposed that, it's not really Richard Stanley's fault. On my phone, of course my phone's going off while I'm recording. Happy days. So he was, more or less seen very clearly by everyone that he got a bad rap. That was not really his fault. So he comes back. He gets in with Elijah Wood's production company, actually, which Elijah Wood is kind of an awesome dude when it comes to some of these like weird indie genre stuff. For everything from thrillers like what the hell is it called? He just had Come to Daddy. It's a new movie. I think it might be on Amazon Prime. He did this little thriller called Come to Daddy. It was fucking awesome. But it's because of his production company that those movies get made. And he's done a slew of others, really interesting stuff. And so he backed Richard Stanley. He's a big film nerd, Elijah Wood. I don't know who sought who out, but Richard Stanley ended up directing this movie. And how is the movie? Well, it's an interesting flick. 100%. I will say for sure. It is a very interesting flick. I really liked it. I really enjoyed it. I don't think everybody is going to be attuned to appreciate this. It is an odd film. Nicolas Cage is pretty much the lead. He's more of like a co-lead. He's more part of like a larger ensemble as the story kind of surrounds this family that's living in the woods, and the madness that ensues because this meteor falls from the sky and ends up in their yard, and it kind of affects them all on different psychological levels. And Nicolas Cage, being Nicolas Cage, gives a Nicolas Cagey performance. But if you enjoy that kind of stuff, you're gonna love that. It's unhinged. Nicolas Cage, he's kind of channelizing. He's channeling Vampire's Kiss. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's like a movie from the late '80s, early '90s, where he was this. He kind of almost plays like this weird, foppish rich guy, and he does this kind of crazy accent. It's a super entertaining movie. If you've never seen it, I suggest checking it out. But he channels that for this performance at times, as the madness kind of consumes him, and the kind of disappointments of his life. And there's this kind of subtext of his father not approving of his life choices and what he wants to do with himself. It is a legitimately creepy flick at times. The practical effects work, it's mostly all practical, for makeups and stuff, is really, really great. I think they did a fantastic job. It's like gross and gooey because they're kind of like go through like almost mutations, and they're hit with this radiation, this light, this alien life force or entity. You don't really know what it is, and they do a great job with that stuff. So if you are into like kind of, you're a horror hound, you like gore, you like that kind of stuff, I would definitely check it out just for that, myself. But I think the whole package is pretty good, and I'm somewhat of a fan of H.P. Lovecraft. I grew up reading H.P. Lovecraft stories, but I had never read Color Out of Space until right before I watched this movie. It's a short story, it like takes you 20 minutes to read through, and this is a fantastic adaptation of that short story. I would say it's probably the best, most faithful, like almost in a direct sense, of an H.P. Lovecraft story. It changes the perspective of what you're experiencing the story through, and there is some stuff shifted around. It's different, but the spirit, like the actual thesis statement of the story, is 100% intact. And I was really impressed just because of that. It's really, really kind of shows that Richard Stanley has got a few more tricks up his sleeve, and I'm happy that he's back making movies again. And as a director, I would say there was definitely budget limitations. There is a little bit of a stiffness in his style. I think he's trying to like kind of rediscover himself. But apparently he's working on he's going to do two more H.P. Lovecraft adaptations. I'm not 100% sure what they are. Let's see if we can look here real quick. I don't know if they're on his now. They're not on his IMDb, but I think I don't remember the name. I'm not going to butcher it, but I don't remember the names of the stories. But he's going to do like two more, I guess, do like kind of an H.P. Lovecraft like trilogy, and I'm really looking forward to it because he is a guy that you can tell was just frothing at the bit to make a new movie. There's a lot of this is a passion project, 100%. It's more than adequate. I would just say that in terms of a cinematic experience, it can feel a little flat at times. But I do think some of that is budgetary constraints. I'm sure they had a tight schedule. I'm sure this thing was shot in like 25 days or something crazy, especially considering the content of the movie. I mean, if this was a big studio production, they would have shot this over 6-7 months. You know, they would have spent like weeks doing the practical effects work and stuff like. So the actual product itself is impressive relative to what they were able to accomplish with what they had. And the cast is really good for the most part, I think. I mean, they're not all, it's the strongest performances. They're all kind of stylized performances. It's kind of supposed to feel a little off and a little otherworldly, because I've seen other people talk about how bad the performances are, cheesy it is and stuff, but there is a sense of stylizedness to this whole production, which I think people just kind of either goes over their heads, or I don't know what people expect when they watch movies. I'm the kind of person that says, okay, does this movie accomplish its goals? If I can discern what the thesis statement or what the goal of the movie is, and then I look, or the story rather, and does the story, is it executed? You know, there's a lot of times, a lot of like kind of mediocre movies where you'll be like, oh, okay, I get what you were saying, or I get where you're going with that, but I don't think you did it very well. Like, you know, and I don't think this movie suffers from that. I think it is, you have to go in with kind of a relative sense about what you're watching, and maybe even have a little awareness of the production history. But I think that overall it's a pretty close to a slam dunk. I would have liked, in terms of the cinematography, the director of photography and whatnot, his work. I wish it was a little more cinematic because, like I said, it's a little flat, almost like a TV movie ish at certain points. Not the entire way through. There is definitely some cinematic moments and visual storytelling, but more often than not, I would say it's a little on the flat side. But that's why I'm excited to see him kind of dust off those cobwebs, get back out there, do something new. I want to see his second time up at bat again in this new era of Richard Stanley. And I hope he keeps working. He's an interesting guy. If you don't know anything about Richard Stanley, I would watch that documentary Lost Souls, but also just look. He's into weird magic and shit. He does rituals. I think even there's a behind the scenes I didn't mention on the 4K. Yeah, the making of Color Out of Space. He goes into how he did some kind of ritual, right before he got the call or something like that. Him and his buddy were up in a mountain. They're shaman. So I guess is magic the appropriate term for that? I don't know. They're shaman. They're into weird esoteric spiritualistic stuff. They're into, I think he wanted to go find the Holy Grail or something like that. He's all into that kind of stuff. He's a wild cat. But that you often will produce a interesting storyteller. Maybe not perfect movies. Movies don't need to be perfect to be interesting or to be worth your time. I would say Color Out of Space. I feel like people are going to be kind of split on it, whether or not you feel like you've completely wasted your time or not. But I think if you go in with the right perspective, if you have a love for horror and science fiction and H.P. Lovecraft especially, because it was really, at the end of the day, it honors that story and it honors the perspective of H.P. Lovecraft in more than I've seen most movies. Even movies of people that really respect, made by people that really respect H.P. Lovecraft. Recently Stuart Gordon passed away, and he was kind of the torchbearer for H.P. Lovecraft stuff. He did, Reanimators based on an H.P. Lovecraft story, From Beyond, another H.P. Lovecraft story, and I know he did one other one. I'm drawing a blank though. Is it Castle Freak? Is Castle Freak an H.P. Lovecraft adaptation? I don't think it is. Oh, and he also did Dagon, Dagon, which is, it's all right. I would go watch those other Stuart Gordon movies I mentioned before I watched Dagon again. But it has its subtle charms. You just got to be in for a good old-fashioned kind of cheese fest. And Stuart Gordon is always somebody that kind of saw beyond his means. And sometimes that worked out for him because you get something that was, small scale, low budget, but very ambitious. And other times, it was obviously felt like somebody reaching past their means. Yeah, that's really all I got to say about it. I know that was super interesting for everybody, but hey, content is king. You got to put content on your YouTube pages. I don't know if you're aware of this. You want subscribers? You got to kind of branch out. You got to do that. You got to do that stuff. But yeah, like I said, please, I would recommend it myself if you are of the kind of, I don't know, affectation that I am, or if you're the kind of person that likes these kind of things, these genre works, I would say give it a go. It's totally worth at least watching and checking out. Maybe don't buy it. It'll probably end up on Netflix or a streaming service at some point in the near future. Most of these do. These lower budget RLJE movies, because that's where most people see them. Not most people don't go out and buy them. Honestly, you have to kind of, sometimes you got to buy them kind of quick because there's if you want to buy a physical copy, because there's such a limited printing of them. Although other times though, that's not the case, and then they end up in the $8 bin, which, if you go watch my 4K bargain bins from Walmart video, those movies are $8. $8 for a 4K is pretty good. So yeah, check it out. Color Out of Space. And if you like this video, please give it a like, subscribe to the channel. Also, if you'd like to follow Zoobox more closely, if you want to get intimate with us, you want to see the inner workings, how the sausage is developed in our brains for the things that we talk about, you can follow us over at Facebook. If you just search Zoobox Podcast on Facebook, you can follow us on Instagram at Zoobox Podcast. A lot of funny stuff, a lot of memeing, a lot of laughs and gaffs. All right, everybody. Shaun out. Zoobox forever.